So this is my last lecture of the semester. We are at the end of the semester. You are writing your final paper, which is a persuasive paper. I want to talk about that a little bit. And then my focus today is on how do you create an outline? How do you create an outline? So to begin with, a persuasive paper has two components, must have two components. There must be a problem. There must be a controversy. There must be an issue. Okay? And our problem that we are focusing on is the California water problem. You can call it the California water crisis, but that's our focus. That's our problem. We have become informed about the California water problem by reading two articles. Correct? The first one was this one. Meet the California couple who uses more water than every home in Los Angeles combined. And you will recall, you know well, that the full title is what I read, and then plus how mega farmers Linda and Stuart Resnick built their billion-dollar empire. It is written by Josh Harkinson, and it came from Mother Jones magazine, and it was published 2 years ago in August of 2016. You know that well. We divided this long article into 3 sections, and you summarize the 3 sections. In the internet, this article is not divided into 3 sections. We divided it here in order to make it manageable. We became also informed about the problem of water by reading this. I was going to say article, but it's not really an article. This is a report. Water heist. How corporations are cashing in on California's water. Now you notice there's no colon right here, but there needs to be a colon, because this is what is called the main title, and this is what is called the subtitle. The subtitle. It's kind of a second title that goes with the first, and the two of them are separated by a colon. Okay? Now, I have told you that this article has no author. I have told you that this article was published by a group called Public Citizen. And I told you that since the article had no author, that this was what we call a corporate author. I lied. I was not careful enough. If you look on page 3 of this report, you can read this. This is directly from page 3, the bottom of page 3. Acknowledgements. This report was researched and written by John Gibler. We have an author. Now, he had help. In research, he had help by Kevin Chapin, by Logan Harris. They helped him, and also 3 other people helped edit the report. Juliet Beck, Hugh Jackson, Erica Hartman, and John himself. Okay, so that means when you refer to the article Water Heist, you can say the first time John Gibler, and other times after that Gibler points out in his report. Gibler explains, because I did not see that he had written the report. This is a report, not so much an article, because it's got a table of contents. It's got sections. You recall, It's got an executive summary that we read in class, and which summarizes the main points. It's got a section on the Monterey Amendments. It's got a section by itself on the current water bank, and another section on who controls it. This is the section that deals with real estate developers. The irrigating sprawl. Sprawl means the growth. When if I have a bunch of marbles and I drop them and they sprawl, they spread. This is how, in terms of this is how cities are growing. Los Angeles, it is sprawling, it is growing. And real estate developers that build the new communities, they have to find a way to irrigate, to provide water for those communities. And so this section of the report by Gibler deals with that. And then there's a section on blaming the environment, the Napa proposition, the issue of public versus private property. And I mentioned that Wendelin focused on the privatization of water. And I think that could be a nice title. And it doesn't have an opinion in it because she doesn't say whether, for example, I'll give you an example. If she said, the privatization of water is ruining California, that would be an opinion right there, huh? Because I would be saying that this privatization is harming harming might be better. Okay? So, this is a section that deals with the public versus private property. And then, the next section is where they provide the solutions. And Gibler's report is different from Josh Harkinson's article. Josh Harkinson's article is objective, or he tries to be objective. Gibler's report, it is persuasive. It is trying to persuade the reader that, hey, this is what should happen. These are the solutions. These are the actions that should take place in order to solve this problem. So Gibler's report is persuasive, is argumentative. Argumentative. Persuasive and argumentative mean the same thing. Okay? Yes?
Does that page doesn't look like an outline in this case?
It is kind of an outline. I'm glad you said that, Douglas, because this is his outline. He has these sections in this order. That's a very good point. A table of contents is an outline. Every book has a table of contents. That's the outline of the book. Very good point. 2 points. All right, so back to a persuasive paper must have two components. The problem, and it must have a thesis. A thesis. And this is an example of a thesis. It says, the role farmers play in this critical situation has impacted the water shortage. It's not a perfect thesis, but it is a thesis. I would tell Luis that we should make a distinction between farmers and farming corporations. Small farmers are farming. Small farmers are farmers. Are they contributing to the water problem? Maybe. But there's a big difference between a farmer and a farming corporation such as the Wonderful Company. in the title of Judge Harkinson's article, he calls them mega farmers. He calls them mega farmers. Okay? So these are the farming corporations, and I think that they are different from a family farm, smaller farms. Okay? All right. So at this point, I was going to ask, do any of you now have your thesis? Do you have your general opinion that you would like to share so we can kind of look at it and maybe comment on it? Douglas, do you want to, are you looking, or you want to just stall time until I go to the next point?
No, I just wrote something. So
you want to just give us your something that you wrote?
So, we need to change. We cannot live without water. Water is the most essential thing in life, and every human being needs water to survive.
I'm glad you said that, Douglas, because that leads to a big point. And the big point is this. The big point is this. Your thesis cannot be so obvious that nobody would disagree with it. Who would disagree that we cannot live without water?
Nobody.
Not a good thesis. Let's compare. This says that these individuals have impacted the water shortage. Now, impacted is kind of a neutral word, Luis. If you said made worse the water shortage, that's more poignant, more opinion, huh? Mm-hmm. All right. So this qualifies as an opinion that some people would disagree with. Some people would say, well, no, I think the biggest problem is the drought, you know. But here, well, maybe President Trump might disagree.
Oh, yes.
But you see that the Monica was saying, you know, maybe I'm confusing you. This is not a good thesis, and this is a thesis. This is not a thesis at all because it is too obvious. No one would disagree. This is what is called an accepted fact. An accepted fact. Again, two components that you need. The problem and the thesis. And in your introduction, in your first paragraph, you must mention these two things. You must mention these two things. You must briefly, generally describe the water problem. And since we have two sources, give them credit. Mention them. The first time that you mention the authors, we have two authors, John Gibler, Judge Harkinson. The one is an article, one is a report. Give the complete title. Give the complete name of the author. Okay? In the introductory paragraph. And then include your thesis. Include your opinion. You don't have to do it in this order. You can start with your thesis. Farming corporations have made the water shortage in California worse. And then explain, okay, the problem in general. Okay, this is the introductory paragraph. Okay? So, I've explained what a persuasive paper is, which is the same thing as an argumentative paper. It is a paper that focuses on a problem and that it has the general opinion of the writer. Okay, so how do you organize your paper? We organize our papers with an outline. And I showed you the table of contents, the outline of the report on water heist. But now, how do you create the outline? One way to do it, not the only way, but one way to do it is to make a list of the people that are connected to the problem. Make a list of the people that are connected to the problem. And in this case, we have six groups of people. We have the small communities, small farmers, the private farming corporations, and the wonderful company being the largest and most influential, which is owned, as you know, by the Resnicks. We have the fourth group of people are the real estate developers. The fifth group of people are the politicians who become part of the state government. And we have voters, taxpayers, okay? These are the six people that are connected to the problem. Did I leave any group out? Okay. So, here are the people that are connected to the problem. But how are they connected? Why are they connected to the problem? This is what we need to identify. This is what you need to identify. This is what you need to understand. Okay? So, tell me, how are small communities related to the problem of water in California? They don't have water. Why?
They don't have water in their wells because big farmers.
They don't have water in their wells because?
Big farmers.
Because big farmers
are pumping a huge amount of water.
The big farmers are pumping a huge amount of water.
So the level of the water goes down.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Small farmers, small communities do not have water for drinking and other uses because their wells do not reach the water because the farming corporations are pumping a lot of water with their deep wells. So the water level underground is lower and the wells from small communities do not reach the water. Now, do all small communities lack water? All of them? Every single one of them?
Most of them.
Most of them. Right. But because it's not all of them, it's not good to say this in a generality. This would be a generality. So we have to qualify it. We have to narrow down the generality by inserting one single word. One single word. You can use most, the majority, or that. Okay? Alright, so the second group of people are the small farmers. How are the small farmers related to the water problem? Why are they related to the water problem?
Because they don't have the water in the same way to the small community.
They also don't have water for the same reasons that small communities don't have water. Their wells don't reach far enough to get to the water, the lower water level. But other people have mentioned other points, other reasons why farmers are related to the water problem.
Because they have to buy the water.
They have to buy the water and it's a little expensive. Angel?
They also don't have enough resources like well, under the water.
Right. They don't have the resources to build deeper wells. And one more point that I think Douglas mentioned was the state water restrictions. In what year were the state water restrictions?
Is that 14?
Pardon me?
14 or 16? I don't remember.
I thought it was 1995.
Oh, yeah, 95.
If I'm wrong, in the 90s, let's say in the 90s, the state imposed water restrictions. And so some farmers may have some restrictions. So small farmers do not have enough water to water their crops because of state restrictions, the high cost of water, lack of rain. And because the farming corporations are pumping a lot of water with their deep wells, so the water level underground is lower and the wells of small farmers cannot reach the water. Very good. The third group, and also we have to qualify it with some. some farmers may have enough water, but so we qualify it by putting some. The third group of people, this is one of the biggies. There are at least 4 reasons why private farming corporations are connected to the water problem, are related to the water problem. 4 of them. Can you give me one reason why farming corporations are related to the water problem? Gwendolyn?
Use a lot of water, not only for the fields that they have right now. They use the water too for spend.
Yes, they are connected to the water problem because in times of drought, they are expanding the number of orchards that they plant. They're planting more orchards. You're right. What's the second reason why farming corporations are related to the adding to the water problem? Alma? They are selling the water. They have right now the right to sell water. So they're expanding, they're selling water, even as they're expanding. What's the third reason why they are adding to the water problem?
Digging deep wells.
They are digging deep wells, and that is lowering the underground water level. That is very true. That is a third reason. There's a fourth reason. This is from Water Heist. Water Heist, John Hibbler mentions a fourth reason why farming corporations are adding to the water problem.
Some of them doesn't have a really. Some of them don't have a like a restriction for the water they receive.
Well, you are right. Restrictions do not affect farming corporations as much as other farmers, especially if they have senior rights and if they are part owners of the current water bank. You are right. Gwendolyn?
They are connected with the politics.
With the politicians? They are connected to the politicians because they contribute to their campaigns. But John Hibbler makes a more specific point.
They help the real estate.
That's right. They help the real estate developers. So, I have, they're making the water problem worse, the farming corporations, because they're digging deeper wells. They are planting more orchards and watering them with water from the current water bank, which is now being refilled with water from Northern California because the last 3 days we have had rain, but the last 5 years we have had very little rain. And so this is the second reason. The third reason is that they are selling water that they buy from the state at a low price, and they sell it back to the state because the state needs it to provide water by other farmers whose water allotment maybe was restricted and or who want to buy water. And the fourth reason, of course, is that, as Gibbler points out, they are selling paper water rights to real estate developers. Okay? All right, so the fourth group are the real estate developers themselves. Why are they related to the water problem? Why are they adding to the water problem?
Because they need water to get their projects approved.
To get their projects approved. You're totally right. State developers need to get their projects approved. And one way to do that is to go to the people that own the current water bank and buy paper water contracts. And with these paper water contracts, it becomes possible for them to get their projects approved, to build 100 homes, 150 homes in one area, which becomes a neighborhood, right?
Yes.
Becomes a new community. And there's a consequence of that. There's a consequence of using this paper water contracts. What is that consequence? What is the result of that?
So when the contracts ends,
Yes,
so the county or well, the county I think is responsible.
that's exactly
provide
right.
water.
That's exactly right. After the paper water contracts expire, the county then becomes responsible for providing water to those new communities.
What is it?
The county then becomes responsible for providing water to those communities because, the developer can say, hey, I don't have a contract anymore, but these people don't have water. You need to provide water for them. This is according to John Hibbler in Water Heist, in his report, Water Heist. Okay? All right, so the fifth group of people that are connected to the water problem are the politicians. And how are politicians connected to the water problem?
Politicians.
They make the restrictions.
Pardon me?
They make the restrictions.
They make the decisions. Once they get elected, they make the decisions. And the politicians, I'm using Douglas's word, they protect the farming corporations because the farming corporations donate money to their campaigns so that the politicians become elected officials and they become government legislators, governors, etc. Okay? So that's how politicians are connected to the state water problem. And the sixth group of people are us, the taxpayers, the voters. Are we adding to the water problem?
Yes.
How?
We elect the politicians, the governors.
We elect, okay, yeah, you're right. Voters elect politicians. The problem is, the propositions that in each elections, in the first Tuesday of November, there were elections and there were propositions. This is a very important part of government. This did not always happen. A proposition gets put on the ballot if a group of citizens, a group of people, get enough signatures. I don't know what the number is, 30,000, I'm not sure. And so that proposition goes on the ballot. And if it is approved by the majority of voters, it becomes law. So this is a second way to make laws separate from the government, separate from the legislature. Did you know that?
Like for example, for the plastic bags.
Yes.
It happened like 2 years ago.
There you go. A group of people, let's say Alma, very political, and Douglas. Well, let's say your whole group, your whole class, this whole class becomes very angry about the water problem. And they asked me to write a proposition in which the current water bank would become public again. And then we would all go out and get 1,000 signatures, 2,000 signatures each, so that we would get enough signatures to put that proposition to make the current water bank public again in the ballot. And if it got approved, the current water bank would be public, no longer private. But here's the question. What chance would we have to succeed?
Very low.
Hmm?
Very low.
Very low. Very low. Why?
Because technically the population doesn't have enough money to invest and to educate the people about the problem. And then the farming company, in this case, they have a lot of money, so with a few signs, they can actually do a lot.
That's right. This is why I put the ellipses. Voters elect politicians and can also propose propositions to change government policies. Now here comes the semicolon. However, farming corporations spend money to influence voters. And I should have put a lot of money. I could have put millions. And that's why voters are powerful but they're also influenced by advertising posters on the road and things like this. Okay? So, we have now identified the 6 groups that are connected to the water problem, and we have stipulated why they're connected to the water problem. In what way? In what way? So, you can see that then this can become the sections of your article, the sections of your persuasive paper. You can choose to do them in this way, so 6 sections your paper would have. Or you can choose to juggle them and put them in a different order. And in this way, you would be creating your outline. Now, I have already mentioned the introduction. Okay? This is the outline. Outlines have Roman numerals at the start. Roman numerals. You'll see them. So I mentioned that the introduction has to have 2 things in it: the description of the problem and your conclusion, your thesis. Your thesis. Okay? Then the body of the paper, the first section of the body. In this, you would explain one part of the problem. What part of the problem do you want to explain first? You want to explain these 2 together, or you want to begin with these? You want to begin with how water became privatized? You decide the way you want to organize your paper. Okay? So I just put explain in detail one part of the problem. You notice that I mentioned here in the introduction, describe it briefly. But here, give me the details. Douglas.
So, if for example, in this case, in that number 2 section, we are going to talk about small communities, for example.
Okay.
Then we have to write like a small community and then go.
You're talking about whether you should have subtitles in the paper. You can if you want to. You
But
can.
It's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
Okay.
But if you want to, to make your paper, okay, teacher, here I want to talk about small communities, you can. You can. Okay? Now, I use the word section. I don't use the word paragraph. Because one section could take more than one paragraph. But it's a section that talks about one aspect of the problem. Gwendolyn.
We need to
So entonces,
mention the 6
You need to mention the 6 components? I think an A paper would. I think an A paper would. If you didn't mention the voters, it would not be as bad. If you didn't mention the state developers, you would leave out a significant component. If you did not mention the farming corporations, it would be hard to have a paper. Yeah. All right. The next section, it would be the second section of the body. You would mention the next part of the problem. You would explain in detail the next part of the problem. Summarizing from John Gibler's water heist, or from Judge Harkinson's meet the couple who uses more water. Okay? Alright, so then the other section would be the same thing, a different aspect of the problem. Here I'm only listing three sections where you would explain the problem. You may need more. You may need more. Maybe you could put politicians and voters in one section, and the small farmers and small communities in one section. So that would make it fewer sections that you would need. But I think that since you have an opinion, that you need to include a section where you discuss the solutions. And here, Water Heist, John Gibler would be very helpful because he has a whole section on solutions. Summarize what he suggests or quote him. Remember not to go beyond your 20% limit on quotes.
I have a question.
Please.
Can we do a sentence in numbers, or do we have to do a paragraph?
Paragraphs, Luis.
Okay, just making sure.
An outline is different from a paper. A paper in the same form as a summary. Paragraphs, paragraphs, paragraphs. And please, I beg you, indent your paragraphs. I'm still seeing paragraphs that are not indented. Please, indent your paragraphs. All right, so then after you introduce the problem, introduce your conclusion, and you explain each of the main sections of the problem, aspects of the problem, and you have discussed conclusions, then you just have to conclude. Your concluding paragraph needs two things again, like the introduction. Briefly, but strongly, restate the problem. Restate the problem. And restate your thesis. Okay? And you will have an organized paper. You will have an organized paper. A paper that will not give Gardea a headache trying to figure out, what is this? Okay? Any questions? All right, I hope I have helped you in understanding how to create an outline of a persuasive paper. Thank you. Second applause I've gotten in the semester. Thank you very much.